Hey everybody, and hope everyone's doing well as usual. Thank you for tuning in, and subscribe if you haven't already. Give it a thumbs up, and I love the comments and conversations and stuff like that I've been having. So keep them coming, ideas, questions, that sort of thing. So I wanted to do a quick video. So um, there's been a lot of stuff in the news, about aliens and UFOs. I think it's really exciting. I think, 'cause depending on how old you are, we've been wondering about it for who knows how long, and we just all assume the government's lying like they usually do. So, and keeping things, it's funny because sometimes when you listen to some of the presidents when they're asked about aliens, some of them just lie, but some of them word their answers very carefully to where they're not lying, but they're kind of dodging the question while kind of answering it. Bit of both. Point is, they know, and they don't tell us. Not just the U.S. government, like other world governments too. So, what I found interesting, here's a couple thoughts. So, I was having these conversations with my guides the last few days or so, but I've been really interested in all this information that's been coming out about confirmation of both UFOs and aliens, recovered bodies, spacecraft, and that sort of thing. Now, I just kind of assumed they were real all along, but the fact that governments are now coming out and saying, yeah, UFOs are real, we don't know where they come from, they do. We don't know if aliens are real, they know, so we have had some folks in the U.S. recently come out and say, we've been studying the bodies. And we've actually found bodies and even brought down spacecraft and recovered bodies from crashed UFOs and studied them. And people have admitted that recently from the U.S. government. And in Mexico, they've been testing and presenting these fossilized alien remains. And things have been found and even presented or reported in the past, but written off as hoaxes, like the Atacama skeleton found in Peru a few years back. They wrote off as, oh, this is a human. It's not. It's a cover-up. That was a total cover-up. So there's been evidence like this before, but they're only now starting to confirm it and saying that it's true. Recently, what really blew my mind is in these conversations I was having when I was asking about aliens, is this is kind of how they went. Okay, so they've actually been living here, like with us the whole time. From what I heard, from what I understand, this totally blows my mind. So, and it makes sense. So there's this greater, and this Israeli general talked about it one time. There's a greater galactic federation, planets and civilizations that work together to try to understand existence itself. And they're very evolved, actually, very much so. And we've just been recently communicating with them over the last few decades and observing their existence more and more. And but it goes further than just the fact that they are everywhere. So, and they have been, so here's kind of the analogy I was asking about, kind of where I landed after all my conversations over the past few days. It's kind of like, say we were to go explore a new area and there's all forms of life there, say like on a new island, right? And then eventually, we set up shop and just kind of live there and observed, and then try to not interfere with the natural organisms and mammals and species and everything underwater, in the air, on the ground, and just to observe and learn. So part of their goal is this ancient, there's a really old too, this whole federation of, it sounds very much like Star Trek, and that's a good analogy, I think, or good example. But their goal is to just like spread out and map the universe and observe life in all its forms and that sort of thing, but to be very non-intrusive. that's a whole nother conversation I'm still trying to understand, is what is their non-interference policy, and to be non-intrusive, and why? Because I kind of get it, but I kind of don't. So I'm still trying to understand the lack of contact, and simply until we are ready to reach out to them and that sort of thing, which has been occurring over the past few decades. So I'll have to find out more about that. But they have a very strict non-interference policy, and it's comes from a good place, like a more higher evolved place, in other words. So because there are some very ancient, this collective, they are very advanced. If they wanted to colonize or conquer us, they could have done that. But so really, it's our fear of the unknown, and of course the government is not helping because they don't tell us what they know. But it's becoming more and more known. But there have been, starting with the moon, and the astronauts confirm this that have been there, and there are structures on the moon and underground bases and spaceships. Like when our astronauts went up there, they were told not to say anything. Later they came out and said what they saw. Some of them did, but they were threatened initially. But there were like spaceships and aliens on the moon and underground. There are entire cities that are built there. So they're living on our moon for a long time. And underground, they have bases, and they do here on Earth as well. So underwater, from what I heard and what I understand, and underground in select places around Earth, to stay out of sight and that sort of thing. But to live here, just like we would move and live somewhere, but to also understand and capture all the data and information and study. So now some of these places, like in Peru, I did a video on it, but there's these tribes out in the middle of nowhere kind of, and they see aliens, and there's like bases and locations there, and that's what they're seeing. These alien cities, and there is a great video to Admiral Byrd from the United States after World War II, I think it was, 1 or 2. Sorry, I'll have to double check. But when they were exploring Antarctica, they found this massive underground cave. He actually flew down through there with his plane, and there was an entire city down there. And he actually has in his diary and talks about how his plane was brought down, not violently, but brought down, and these beings that from the city actually talked to him. They were aliens, and he was silenced by the government. And why would they tell him not to say these sorts of things if they weren't true? Because he was there like with a whole, I think, expedition, if I recall correctly. But his diary entries were true, and he was told not to share what he experienced. So there are, believe it or not, evolved alien cities, not just bases, but like entire cities that exist within Earth and underwater, and even underneath the surface of the moon. Again, not evil or bad. They're not. They've been living here a long time and have left us alone for the most part, other than through observation and study and that sort of thing. But now that we're aware of them and our technology is increasing and that sort of thing, communication is inevitable. And it's been happening for quite some time. So there's no really validity behind like evil aliens are here to control us or destroy us. Their level of technology is such that they could have done that if they wanted to. So it's like now there are bad civilizations out there and that sort of thing, but luckily this area of the universe and everything has been well, for lack of a better word, not colonized in, the sense that we may know it on Earth to take over things, but more like colonies have been set up in certain areas to not just observe, but protect too, and believe it or not, that sort of thing. So thankfully, the ones that are here and have been here a long time aren't here with an evil agenda. But that doesn't mean there's negative planets and bad civilizations out there. So, one interesting thing too, like, and I talked about this in another video, Like in Admiral Byrd's diary, when you hear him, he says, yeah, he spoke with the beings and they explained this. They said this and this. And then Dr. Stephen Greer, who's another well-known researcher and like a UFO um, expert, has worked with a lot of government officials and spoke with aliens too directly. And he talks about conversations with them. And then he talks about conversations that other people have had with them, and they all just kind of glaze over the fact that these aliens can speak English. I mean, how else could they communicate if they couldn't understand our languages and every language on Earth? So that's another fact. There's a really fascinating reason for that, and it is actually one of the most evolved facts that this civilization possesses, and technology is their ability to communicate with the afterlife, literally through technology. So, and I talk about this in a different video, but if you think about it, so we as humans, we process and we compute and we're physical and we have non-physical minds, and we can control our thoughts and that sort of thing. And when you're trying to use like spiritual or psychic abilities, you're accessing the non-physical portion of you, your soul, like your spirit, and that which survives when we die. So we're using both halves of our being, physical and non-physical at all times. And and that's partly the reason why it's so hard sometimes to hear a message. It's a skill, and I'm still trying to learn it too. But some psychics are very fluid with their information and can see or hear clearly. Some are incorrect sometimes, and there's a reason for that, because it's not always easy to pick up everything loud and clear, or we'd all be seeing and hearing stuff around us at all times. So it's just that we're not used to it, so it's like a skill you have to obtain. But if you were to create like a robot or AI or something, and program its ability to be aware of non-physical energy and then have a mind like we do, could you imagine like if basically we just created that and then it was able to communicate and develop its skill set and exponentially until, just like a computer can, of course, and then it'd be like having a high-speed computer communicate with you or for you non-physically with the afterlife all the time. So all it takes is just creating some form of physical life that, like us, that has an awareness of the mind and the non-physical idea of energy and existence and that sort of thing, until it gets better and better at communicating. So they're able to, they don't speak our language through pure observation by being here. They can actually speak every language on Earth because they can get this information from the spiritual realms. As crazy as that sounds, but it makes sense if you put it that way, right? Like, the afterlife is real. Some people have the ability, anyone can develop the skill to communicate with the spiritual world or non-physical world. But if you can harness that through technology, imagine the potential. And then you could just, it could just download information and every language, for example, and you could communicate seamlessly with people over here, that died and crossed over, or spiritual beings like angels. Could you imagine if like a robot was able to receive instructions and then project like a hologram of what the angel is that you're talking to? You could literally speak using technology to individuals in the afterlife. So they have this ultimate understanding of how these things work and a direct bridge to communication with those over there. I just think it really blows my mind. So, especially in the context of evolution and technology and possibility, I mean, conceptually it makes sense, and it is true. I believe it's true. So, anyways, aliens are real. Their technology is amazing. They're not here for evil purposes. They've been here before we even evolved as humans. They've been on and in this earth and on the moon, observing and just kind of mapping the universe as they go. So, and their ability to heal and speak with those in the afterlife, like they have some amazing capabilities. Now, like I was saying earlier, their whole idea of like non-interference, I disagree with a little bit about that, but I'm starting to learn and understand a little bit about why that is. In other words, why don't they just show up and teach us the ability to heal ourselves? And, this knowledge and ability to communicate with the afterlife could really just stop a lot of our conflict on Earth, because a lot of it stems from differences, and a lot of our differences are built through our cultural ideas and mentalities about how to live life while we're down here, because we don't know. We don't know. We're still trying to figure out. We have so many ideologies, religious and otherwise, and capitalism versus communism, and freedom versus force and propaganda and control, and peace treaties and unity versus, invasions and war and conquering and things like that. And then there's religious feuds. And if they would just explain to us these things, there is the theory, though, that Earth would be thrown into mass panic. And you know what? I kind of get that. I mean, it doesn't take much. We've only had smartphones for 20 years. We only went to the moon 50 years ago or something like that. Humans have been around for 10, 50, hundreds of thousands of years, depending on how you track that, written language, spoken language, conscious thought, inventing the wheel. And we've only had phones for a few decades. So I can only imagine we'd freak out if aliens were real and we learned about, the truth behind the evolution of the universe and the existence of life after death. It might make things worse. I don't argue with that, but I'm still trying to understand this whole idea of, us coming to them, us evolving to the point where we begin to harness what they have already and use it responsibly is actually part of the reason that they don't share this with us. Because, like with anything, if they started giving this amazing technology, we could use it either to create free energy for the world or create the most destructive weapons the Earth has ever seen, and continue to just go to war with each other. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we nuked and bombed entire cities in World War II and just completely destroyed life, So we still have to learn how to get along here on this planet and realize things ourselves. So that's part of the answer. But anyways, just to end on that note, so that's all I wanted to share. I think it's pretty cool stuff, and I just wanted to put it out there again. I think it's great stuff to think about and talk about and watch for on the news, because it's becoming more and more prevalent, on news and social media and stuff like that. So, all right, well, thank you. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for watching. And, of course, please take care and have a great week. And we'll see you next time.